Hey, comrades. Hope everyone's doing great. I'm doing just fine. My children, all three of them this time, not just one, not just the baby, all three of those assholes kept me up last night. They each took turns so that they could all get sleep. Lord, give me strength. Anyway, today we're here to talk about Marvel Fanfare 1 through 4. Now, why are we talking about Marvel Fanfare 1 through 4? Because it's the return of Karl Lykos as Sauron. It's also heavily stars Angel for the first couple issues, along with Spiderman, because Spiderman is the most popular character. So you're trying to get a new series off the ground. You got to put Spider-Man in it, so all the dummies are going to buy it. That's how it works. Then in the second half, it's just the X-Men and Kazar and Karl, good old Karl Lykos and stuff. We also get a return of like the Swamp Mutants. Now the Swamp Mutants, I call them that because I don't think they have like an official title, but it's like Brainiac or Brainchild with the big head, and then Vertigo, who like gives people vertigo, and then like some forearm guy and some blind fighter guy. And then the frog guy who jumps. Anyway, so to get started, we have Tanya, I think is her name, who is Karl Lykos' like lover from all the way back in Uncanny X-Men, like a long time ago. So she is taking a helicopter to this area in like New Mexico, I think is where they're at. And she lands, and we run into Candy Southern. Oh, Candy Southern, nice. So Candy Southern is now living with Warren Worthington, and Warren Worthington runs like the family business. And then Tanya is showing up here because she wants to ask him a question, a very important question. And then we get a little like, hey, what is Angel been up to these days? So like, he was a member of the X-Men, then he was a member of the Champions. He came back to the X-Men. I'm actually not sure if like, I'm pretty sure he did like. No, I don't think he was on the West Coast. Was he? Was it him and Bobby? I know Bobby was on the West Coast Avengers. Or maybe that's the Champions I'm thinking of. Anyway. So yeah. So he did the Champions, and now he just wants to chill and not do anything. He's just tired of being a superhero. He just wants to relax. And right now he's up with the birds, like communicating with them. So I guess that's a power he now has on some level. But he flies down. He's like, oh, my guest is here. So he flies down, and he's like chit-chatting, and Tanya's like, we get like a recap of the whole Soren story, which if you can go back in my videos and see like all that jazz. But the gist of it is there was this guy, Karl, who was he was like a doctor, and he was trying to advance some sort of thing, and he kidnapped Alex Summers, and then by absorbing his powers, because he got like attacked as a child by like pterodons, which are the like official name of like pterodactyls or something. Maybe they might be different. I'm not a dinosaur guy, to be completely honest. Anyway, and so then because of that, he needed to steal the life force of other creatures or something, and it's he's like a mutant because of that. And then the X-Men fought him. He fell down in like Tierra del Fuego here into the Savage Land, and then he was like Sauron, and then he wasn't Sauron, and finally they got him like cured enough where he could just like hang out and be Kazar's like BFF, and they could just be homies and like hang out in the Savage Land doing Savage Land stuff and being rad. And then it was like, all right, everything's good. But Tanya was not a part of most of these adventures. Last time she saw him, he like fell to his death, but I guess somehow along the way, I don't remember if they ever like met up again, but she like found out about this whole thing, and she wants Angel to take him there because Angel was there like the last time, and so he knows the way. And he's like, nah. And then she's like, I'll give money to your favorite charity. And he's like, I have like infinite wealth, so I don't give a fuck about that. I want to just give money. But apparently she has a lot of wealth. Like her dad's like a famous doctor, and her like fiance was a famous doctor, so that makes sense. She'd be pretty well off. But she said something like $1 million in like the 1980s when this comic came out, and I was like, damn, that's like $1 billion right now. Like, fuck. If I had $1 million now, I'd take it back and start life in the 80s, and like, things would be great. Anyway. So at this juncture, we switch over. Finally, Warren Worthington as Angel agrees. He's like, all right, fine, I'll take you down there. And then Candy Southern's like, you're such a softie, and that's the last we see of her. Because anything bad happens, it's just like moving on. So then we switch over to New York, and Spider-Man is somehow Jonah Jameson, J. Joe Jameson, the head of the writing department, or like the Bugle, the Daily Bugle or whatever. He finds out about this trip that Angel's taking with Tanya to like the Savage Land, and he wants Parker to go back to the Savage Land because apparently he's been there before to do some like photo shots and to do whatever and figure this stuff out. So he's like, no, I'm not going to do it. I refuse. And he's like, And then like after Parker like storms off, J. Jonah Jameson is like, I need him down there. How can I motivate him? And like one of his guys is like, money. And he's like, I'm not, no, what? That doesn't motivate him. I'm not giving him money. And then he's like, what about you? The black guy who's like the second in command. I can't remember what his name is. And he's like, money, idiot. He's got like medical bills for his aunt and like and college debt and all this shit. Just give him some money and he'll go. And J. Jonah Jameson's like, fine, give him money. And he does. And so Spider-Man tags along as well. We then switch over to a helicopter ride down into Antarctica so they can like enter this like secret passage, get to Savage Land, and they're all chit-chatting about it when they get attacked by Pterodon. And it like messes up the helicopter real bad, and then they kind of do a crash landing. Angel grabs Tanya and flies off, and then Parker is able to grab a parachute / he makes his own parachute. But remember, no one knows he's Spider-Man, so it's like he's far enough away where Angel's like, oh good, he got a parachute, hopefully he finds us later. So they all meet up later. And then they start walking along, and they find that old deserted like palace from the Garok story, which is another story with the X-Men in the Savage Land. So there was a guy, he like could take the possession of like the sun and then create like rock powers, and he was like doing some super crazy stuff. And then the X-Men defeated him. And there's a whole side story. Not side story. There's a whole part of the story where Storm is trying to rescue him because the X-Men don't like to kill, except for Wolverine, who loves death. He loves killing people, but Storm doesn't. And so she was trying to save him, but then her like claustrophobia got in the way, and then he died, and she still like has like regrets about it, according to issue 3 of Marvel Fanfare. But for now, they see this crazy city, and they're like, holy shit, that's wild. Should we go check that out? And she's like, oh, I just want to find Karl, something. And so they move around a little bit more. I can't remember. I think they head towards the city, and then they get like jumped by a bunch of goons. And then Angel's like, I'm going to fly out of here. And he gets like vertigoed and then captured. And then Spider-Man like pushes Tanya off like a cliff. So she falls in the water. So hopefully she's okay. She is. But it's like, all right, well, hopefully she lives. And then he puts a Spider-Man costume on and starts fighting guys. And then he gets vertigoed and he gets captured. And then they get taken back to like the Citadel, where Brainchild and like the mutants that I already mentioned are all standing around. They're like, aha, when we got these powers because Magneto created this device which gave us evolution, but now we've discovered a way. I put it back together, and now it can de-evolve people, and that's what we're going to do to you. And so he uses it on Spider-Man and Warren, and to de-evolve them. And then we switch over to Tanya, who's like awakes on the riverbed, and she's like, oh, what? And she looks up, and there's a Tyrannosaurus Rex, dun dun dun. And that leads us into issue 2 of Marvel Fanfare, where we pick up where we left off. So Tanya's like, oh, fuck me, I'm dead. And then Kazar and Karl and their whole like posse like show up, and they kill the shit out of the Tyrannosaurus Rex. And then Tanya is like reunited with Karl, and she's so happy. And then they're like, hey, we got to keep going. We realize that these mutants are back, and they're doing shady shit, and they're attacking like people. And so we came over here to like beat the shit out of them and take care of that business. So we're going to do that. Meanwhile, we see that when do we see the de-evolution? No. So so then they start moving forward, and then they get attacked. And so they're fighting, and they're doing a pretty good job. And then, oh no, there's like a spider monster. And Kazar's like wrestling with it, and he's like, this guy looks vaguely familiar. And it's literally just like a giant spider. But he's wearing like Spider-Man's garb. And then the Angel is now a chicken or some sort of bird man. It's very bizarre, because it's like, well, if this devolved, shouldn't they just both be apes of some sort? Like, hypothetically speaking, because I don't know, I'm pretty sure Angel didn't evolve from a bird, right? I mean, he's a mutant, but is he like a mutant bird man, or is he a bird man and not a mutant at all? And the same thing goes with Peter Parker. Like, he got bit like by a spider. He didn't like, I guess maybe the venom like rearranged his DNA, so if you devolve him, he turns into like a giant spider. Shouldn't they become little spiders? Like, none of this shit makes any sense. Anywho, so that's fun. So they have like some fun monsters to fight, and then eventually Monster Angel grabs Tanya and flies off, and then the Spider-Man, who's like, he seems like he's not fully like lost all ability to understand. Like while he's fighting Kazar, he kind of like backs off and gets concerned looking for like a giant spider, according to Kazar. And then he like runs off. And then when Karl is like, oh no, what are we going to do? We got to get in there and save everybody. And Kazar's like, yes. And he's looking at his knife, and on his knife is part of like the Spider-Man costume that like got torn off with the knife. And he's like, I knew it. I knew that guy looked familiar. Oh man, excuse me. So then we go back to the de-evolution center, and Tanya's now tied up against the wall, and the Brainchild's like, ooh, something. And then right before they're about to use the de-evolution ray on her, Khazar and Karl come up and they start smashing people in the head, and they take out like Frogman and Forearm Guy. I think it's Forearm Guy or the Blind Guy. I don't know. They look very similar because one has forearms, but he doesn't have forearms at every like drawn panel. So I lost track. And then like Vertigo tries to use her thing, but they're able to like stop that from happening by like hitting her in the head with a rock or something. And then Brainchild does the de-evolution on Tanya, but then Karl and Khazar are able to like defeat everybody else with like their crew, and they're like victory, and like, oh no, what are we gonna do? And then Khazar, who's a badass, is like, I know, let's kill them. I'd rather be dead than be like in this state. And then Karl's like, no, I have an idea. If they were like, if this is like an evolution, I can steal evolution. Sure, why not? Like mutant powers or whatever. So he goes and he uses his like suck his drain life ability on everybody. But because he absorbs so much like mutant power, he turns into Sauron. He's like, aha, Khazar, my arch enemy. Someday we will fight again, but not today. I am much more crafty than that. And so he flies away, so he doesn't get caught and held down or anything. And then everyone's satapotamous about it, so they go back to the surface and get rescued by this like Navy research station that's up there. And then Angel and Peter Parker are real satapotamous about everything that occurred and apologetic. And then Tanya's like, I'm gonna stay here and work with Khazar to like eventually get these people like to cure Sauron. And then like that's the end of the issue 2. Issue 3 begins with the X-Men, who have been summoned by Angel to like the Antarctic again. And then while they're flying the helicopter or jet they're in, Storm's getting like really freaked out because like there's this huge blizzard, but it's not natural and it shouldn't be there. And then there's like some other shady stuff, and like there's an earthquake at some point, and she's like freaking out about that. And we get a lot of that anyway. So she's able to like regain her composure enough to create like a bubble around the X-jet or whatever, so they can land at this like this military base, which is like underground. They go down there and they're talking to Angel about like everything that's going on, and about they need to go check out the Savage Land because all these like strange weather phenomenon are like it's centered over there, and they're concerned about Sauron and yada yada yada. It's like, okay, let's go do that. So they head over to the Savage Land, and then we kind of get like a rehash one of the previous story. So we get like a mention that like, oh, we tried to reach out to Khazar, but like all the people we sent to like reach out to Khazar to help us with this scenario disappeared. It's like, that's because Khazar is away in a different plane, like having his own adventure with like his wife. And it's like, oh, that's too bad. So the X-Men get there, they see the old mount. Aurora has like a recall of what I told you about, like Garok and that whole scenario. And then they start fighting guys, and they fighting, and they just felt weak and lethargic, and it's like really hard. And then like finally they're still winning, but then like Soren. And then they capture like the frog guy, and then he's like, oh, I know, I give up, I'm going to take you to my leader. And they're like, all right, that sounds too easy. And so they start walking, and they're getting closer and closer to like the headquarters of the bad guys in that big old city Gantrack like constructed. And then they keep feeling like weaker and weaker, and then finally the frog's like, aha, I gotcha. And he like jumps out and like pummels Wolverine, and then other guys jump out and they just beat the shit out of the X-Men. And then Angel's like up above trying to guide and like fight guys. And then we see what the fuck? And then we see a Sauron comes out, and then Angel has like PTSD and like nopes the fuck out of there, and like runs away really, really, really fast. And Sauron's like, oh, I'll get the guy later. I'm not worried about it. So then he drives Angel up into like the stratosphere or something where it gets cold, and because it gets cold, that's like Angel's one weakness or something. And so he collapses to the earth and like bashes through the trees and all this stuff. Meanwhile, the other X-Men get carried away into Sauron's like inner sanctum, and then they have like a whole conversation about how the de-evolution thing still works. They didn't destroy it last time for some reason. I don't know why. But even if they did, Brainchild brought it back, and all those guys are good to go. And so now they're going to use it on the X-Men, and then they start being like, burr, 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 and like torturing them with that. And then we switch over to Angel, who's like laying on the ground and like passing out from like the fall. And then it's either the end of this issue or the beginning of issue 4 of Marvel Fanfare that he like kind of wakes up and sees some water, and then he hears dun dun dun, it's Khazar and Zabu, they're back, and they're looking for his wife, the She-Devil. I can't remember what her first name is, something the She-Devil. So we'll just go right into it. So he's like gone around, and he's seen all the shit that's gone down, and like his homie like Taran or something, his like village is destroyed, and the She-Devil was going to check on that, but she wasn't there. Or no, Angel's like, yeah, we didn't see her there either, they must have all been captured by Sauron, we got to take care of that. And he's like, yes, let's do that. And so they come up with this plan where they're going to like Kazar has like this ancient trebuchet of sorts, and he's gonna like launch like a fiery rock at the city to like get Sora's attention, and then Angel's gonna like lead him around. I almost wanted to call him Hawkman. I don't know what my deal is gonna lead him around and on a merry old chase so that Kazar can sneak inside and rescue everybody. So again, we have like Storm being like de-evolutionized, re-evolutionized, tortured with this stuff. And Brainchild is like, I'm going to break Aurora's will so I can fuck her. And she's like, get the fuck out of here. And he's like, oh, you'll pay for that. She doesn't. And and so they start doing Kazar sneaks in, rescues Aurora, knocks out Brainchild, is out to kill him. Aurora's like, no, we don't kill. And Kazar is like, that's a terrible idea, but all right. And then him and Sabu and Aurora, they head in. They find the rest of the X-Men. They beat up like the lover of the Garok who's still alive, and then they're able to de-evolve Nightcrawler, rescue Wolverine and Colossus. At some point, we find out that like I think it's in the previous issue where Soren mentions like, oh, that weakness you were feeling, that was the device I made, or the device we used, and like I gave like the protection for all my people. So while you were getting weaker, they were staying just as strong. And they at some point it's like implied that they take care of that machine. So then the X-Men are full strength, and so they start fighting, and they're doing great, and they're just massacring everybody. And then Angel gets nabbed up by Soren eventually with his like hypnotic rays, and he brings him back. And so once Colossus and Nightcrawler and Wolverine and everyone are freed, Vertigo shows up, and the Nightcrawler like throws a rock at her head. Poor girl. Stop being an asshole, maybe. They beat up the other guys. They're just taking care of business. Soren rolls back in, and then Soren gets turned up. He gets like clawed real good by Wolverine. He gets smashed by Colossus. He gets like wind magic by Aurora. Nightcrawler punches him, and then at some point he's like, "Oh, I stole all your abilities while you're here, so we're all just as strong as one another. So while you fight me, you're also getting weaker, and I'm getting weaker, and I'm still going to defeat you because I can still absorb more powers." And then Aurora's like, "Fuck you," and like we see like the outside of like the city, and it's like kaboom, like a Konosuba explosion level kind of event. And then we get back in there, and he's turned back to Karl Lykos because he had like tapped out all his energy, and once he taps out all that like stolen energy, he turns back into Karl Lykos, and it's like, oh, thank goodness. Also, Kazar at some point had found Tanya and the She-Devil, and then they're able to like turn them back. And once everyone's like re-evolved and there's no more like this de-evolution stuff, Colossus is like, I had enough of this shit, and he does what they should have done in the first two issues and just smash the shit out of it. Like just break it, and smash, and it's completely destroyed. And then everyone's like, and then Carl's like, oh, you should just kill me. Like, I'm tired of this. I don't want to turn to Sara no Mo, and I don't like it. And then Aurora's like, no, we're going to take you back. Professor X thinks he's figured it out, so he can help you, and if not, then we can always kill you later. And Carl's like, all right, that works for me. So Karl, Tanya, and the X-Men all return to the X-Mansion. And there, Professor X is like telling Tanya how hard it is, how he discovered at some point through his research that it wasn't that Karl was never a mutant, that he never mutated. What happened was the pterodons were mutated. So when they attacked him and bit him, they like, the mutation is that they turned other people into pterodons, I guess. It's not really fully fleshed out. It's just kind of like hand waved away. But that seems to be like the gist of what Professor X is trying to tell Tanya. So that means if they can isolate it, but it might be, it's been so long since he's had this like disease, like his whole life. So I don't know if they can do anything. And literally while he's talking, it's like the machine's like, ding, cured. And he's like, oh, well, never mind, he's cured. I was like, the fuck? All right. So then it ends with like Karl Lykos and Tanya like hugging it out, and all the X-Men are like super giddy and happy about the whole situation. And Wolverine's like, what are we waiting for? Let's party. Elf, which is what he calls Nightcrawler, go get some beers. And that's the end of the arc, the Return to Savage Land, Karl Lykos Cure arc, and the Marvel Fanfare first 4 issues and whatever. So go ahead, like, share, subscribe, comment, and I will catch you guys later. Bye.